grade student-led conference. Today I will be talking about the things I've been learning throughout these past few weeks.
So SLC is a student-led conference, so it's like a traditional parent-teacher conference. However, the student is really the one leading the conference and the center of it.
Students are not only invited into the conversation, but they're put in the driver's seat of it. So they take the lead on preparing for it and then leading the discussion itself.
So in humanities right now, we're learning about words and their origins and what they mean and how to use them correctly, even though some have multiple meanings. Us students get to talk about what we've been learning, and then we have to show evidence of what we've been learning.
And so they would come and present. They would, at least for our class, kind of talk about the class, what's going well, maybe what's going not so well, and bring in some work samples.
Yesterday for English class, I definitely want to work on formatting my writing because
as a parent, I've been into both a traditional parent-teacher conference and an SLC, and the traditional one's very informative. The teacher talks mostly the whole time and gives me a lot of information about my child. And at the end, I feel very data saturated, but also satisfied in some way. The SLCs, I've been to one where my daughter, she would spend the whole time talking about her work. And I felt that as a parent, I hadn't had that conversation with her. Usually get the parent hey, how's your school today? And my daughter would say, good, fine, we're doing nothing. It's like those one-word answers. But at the SLC, she was empowered and she was given a voice to talk about her work. So I felt that was powerful.
In my story, one of my favorite sentences that I used the word macroscopic because we were learning about the prefix macro, which means large.
There's a multitude of benefits for the student, for parents, and for teachers. For students, it's this ownership of their learning, right? They're given a message that not only is your voice important in this meeting, but it's essential to it.
So a challenge in math and science is probably participating because I like to participate, but only when I'm sure of my answer, only when I know the exact answer is going to be right.
Also, in order to prepare for it, they have to do so much deep reflection. And just the practice of reflecting and building habits of reflection, I think, is such an important piece of their education and their growth as human beings. From a teacher perspective, it's so insightful. We learn so much about our students' experiences that we would otherwise not know. We can observe and we can make assumptions about what's happening based on our observations, but until we sit down and hear from students what their experience is and has been and what they hope their experience becomes, we don't have the full picture and we can't properly help guide them. I feel like, Sienna, what's so cool about you is that I've seen you outside of the classroom take on these really cool risks. You joined surf club, you made a book club. You're doing these things outside of the classroom for you. And those are things in which you're putting yourself out there. And so I feel like what Mr. Coe and your mom are talking about is taking those risks inside the classroom too, and being willing to put yourself out there in order to learn and help your classmates.
I probably participate 1 or 2 times a week. And then my goal, based on that challenge, is to participate 2 to 3 times a week for a month.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely a big difference with having the student be the one to lead the conference. It just sets a different tone to the conference. It makes it a lot more of a celebration of their success rather than perhaps honing in on just problems and challenges. Also, the student doesn't feel confronted if they're the one who's presenting the work. And usually we end up getting at the problems in the same exact way, and we're able to really help support the student.
In order to prepare our students for SLCs, we give them a significant amount of time to reflect and prepare what they're going to say, which matters a lot. We give them at least a week of time in our classes to to reflect, and those reflections are guided. So we'll give them a packet that just asks them to think about, like Adam said, three things for each class. So we ask them to reflect on a piece of work that they're really proud of from that class, something that's been challenging, and then a goal that they have for that class for the rest of the semester. So it's 3 simple things, and they reflect on those for each of their 3 classes. So the first process is just giving them time to think about what those things are, and even remembering what are all of the things that I've done, and then what are the things that stick out to me either because they were successful or they were hard.
Oftentimes we'll ask them to bring some kind of evidence with them to support what they have to say, whether it's like a piece of work that they're really proud of or some area where they're feeling more challenged.
And one of the work that I'm proud of is our presentation that we did. You can like it. And Ron and I got paired together, and I think we worked pretty well together.
In humanities, one of the challenges for me is probably sticking to the same genres because I like to do that. I have my 2 top favorites, which is fantasy and historical fiction. So I like to stay with those most of the time. Like, I'm not that open to like other ones like sci-fi biographies or like dystopian novels because I feel like they're out of my comfort zone, and like I love reading so much I wouldn't want like a certain genre to like stop me from loving reading.
It's also like a pausing point to reflect on what's happening, and then looking forward, it's sort of energizing, right? Like, okay, I've done all these things and now I know what I want to do moving forward, and so it's a really worthy time investment in that way.
A goal that I'm gonna have for myself is probably to read 2 different genres, and usually I read about 4 books a month, I would say. So 2 would be like different genres that I haven't tried out before, and then the other 2 could be like my regular books. And so that's my challenge, my goal.
It can be pretty intimidating for a student to sit in a meeting with their parent and their teachers and have to talk about their learning, especially if it's the first time. Like, that's a scary thing to do. So we actually have them practice a lot.
But my mom already knows I struggle in math.
Which is kind of interesting because
It's like,
your favorite subject
is math.
is math.
We give them time to practice with other students, to practice on their own. And in fact, we have them practice with other students and give each other critique and feedback. So they can give each other celebrations and also thoughtful suggestions on how they can make it better. We have them time themselves as if it was the actual meeting, so it's not the first time doing it when they walk into the room. It can also be helpful to show students videos of SLCs beforehand. So I know that at our school we keep a collection of them. So we share those with students beforehand, especially if it's their first time, so that they can observe another student doing an SLC. We've certainly had parents who, like, kids come to our school for the first time and it's their first experience having an SLC, and it can be a little confusing because I think people are really used to the traditional model of it's just parents and teachers meeting and they're not really sure what to expect. We do send out emails beforehand that sort of overview what an SLC is, why we do it, what they can expect to happen, and invite parents if they have questions to meet with us or chat with us beforehand. But in my experience, anytime it's been a parent's first time, they leave feeling really good about it.
The first thing that's asked in my reflection is what am I most proud of or enjoyed most so far. And what I put for English class is I've enjoyed reading more. So my mom knows that I tend to get like not that much time to read, especially with like work and getting home late. So I like coming to class and getting like 20 minutes to just sit down and read.
So we have to like show our work during the presentation. So since I've been doing this since kinder, it feels really easy to just talk about what I've been learning. So it's just like your parents come in or your guardians come in and then you just talk to them about what you've been learning, and then your teachers are there too to ask you questions.
And then through that conversation, all 3 parties are able to come together to celebrate the students' work as well as help to troubleshoot areas where we can support a little bit better.
I don't really do goals. I mean, like, I don't really set like week goals or like month goals, but that's something I'm definitely going to have to work on in like each of my classes.
That's true, though. I think you don't see it as a goal. You see it as something you're doing automatically because you write yourself notes all the time, right?
Yeah.
With the Post-it notes that you've been using. So those are goals.
And as far as the student, I feel like the student is the expert in the room.
Anytime that parents and teachers are getting together, there's some level of emotion that kids experience, whether it's being anxious because they're going to talk about something not so great, or being really proud and excited because they're going to get to see work that they've done. And in my experience, even the kids who feel anxious because maybe things haven't been going that well, there's a process of problem solving that happens naturally throughout the conference. And so by the time they leave, I feel like there's really good feelings about, okay, I was really worried coming in here, but we came up with a plan and now everybody knows about everything and we're all on the same page, and I'm leaving with like an idea about how I can do better. And I think that can be so transformative, right? Like those kids that came in worried oftentimes are the ones that we get the most out of afterward.
And sometimes the problem is obvious. For example, do like a simple example, like someone doesn't do their homework.
Yeah.
We know it, and families might know it. The student knows it. But having the student slowly kind of realize that and own up to that in front of their teachers as well as their families creates some sense of responsibility where the student's like, yes, I'm not doing my homework. And so instead of us telling the family they're not doing, your child's not doing their homework, which creates kind of some shame and like some disappointment on the child, the child just, I feel, becomes more empowered. Like, I'm not doing my homework, I'm just being, honest and being accountable. And then like what, Callie said, just moving on from there, we're usually see brighter spots.
There's almost like a snowball thing that happens where if you feel comfortable to put yourself out there and ask a question, other people kind of feel like, well, Sienna did it. That wasn't so scary. I could too. And then we build a culture in our classrooms where it's safe to ask questions and to not know answers. And you can be part of starting that process, right? Because even if you don't know, it's still valuable. It's valuable information for us to move forward and to learn together.
Scheduling will probably be the biggest challenge for a lot of people. If schools or teams of teachers can set a block of time aside, like during the month of October, we're going to try to schedule 10 SLCs, and that could be dedicated to SLC month. That could be one way to achieve it.
One, could be possible things that can go wrong is, you get more of a shy student who is very kind of short and says, oh yeah, my time was good, or class was great, and I'm really proud of my work. And in that case, I feel like the students would need some more prompting of like, oh, could you tell me more about this art piece? And could you tell me why you chose that coloring? So prompting helps. Another thing that could go wrong is students aren't prepared. And that's more on the student, where we kind of gave them that week to prepare, we kind of gave them that packet, they practiced, and they just, for one reason or another, they're not ready, they forgot their work samples, they're like running down the hall like, wait, I need can you open the art room? It's like, we're missing the art. It's like, so I think that's one thing that can go wrong is the student just is not prepared.
How do you think your communication is?
It's definitely something I need to work on.
I think sometimes it can be a little more challenging when you're having a real struggle with the student, or there's an area that you want to talk about a little bit more, but the student's not necessarily going to bring that up. One, because that student may not perceive it the same way as you, which is why we want them to be the one leading it, or they are reluctant to want to talk about that. So sometimes being ready to find a way to either address that particular issue or not address it in that one setting and be able to at least know that you're making a connection with a parent, which is then going to lead to future discussions that might get at the thing that you might want to talk about more than the student wants to talk about.
So our school starts doing SLCs in kindergarten. Kindergartners actually lead their conferences, which it does feel really young, right? And there's tons of scaffolding that goes into that process. And in that meeting, maybe there's a little more teacher input happening, but kindergartners do it, and they do it really well. They have so much to say. Your daughter did it as a kindergartner, right?
Yes, and I walked in and all of a sudden my daughter just started talking about her work because she knows about it. She's the expert. And she was telling me about this writing and that piece and that science, and I was just blown away, and I was like, I'm trying to film and like all this stuff. And what I realized is that kids have it in them. It's just being able to unlock that and giving a space to do that. So if I were a teacher thinking about doing an SLC or student-led conference, I think with any change, a small change is the first right step. And a small change would be just inviting the student into that parent-teacher conference. And I guess a step beyond that would be maybe giving that student, instead of like a 10-minute chunk of talking time, maybe like a 1 or 2 minute chunk, prompted like, maybe can you share about this work that we did in class or this work, where the student doesn't feel overwhelmed at first if they're not used to it. And I think that would be a good first kind of initial 2 steps.
I mean, one way to cut down on the number, and a lot of teachers have a lot of students, so that can be difficult, is to put it out there as an option, and people can sign up if they choose, so that could be one way. Or maybe try several that they feel like are students that could probably use a little bit more interaction with parents and teachers, and try those out as like a set of maybe doing 10 to 20 of them and see how they go.
I would say not to be so nervous, because it's actually pretty easy once you do it, because you feel proud of yourself because you just explain what you've been learning through a presentation to your family. So that's how I feel every time I do it. I feel like proud that I've done a presentation, and it's actually really fun, like to just talk about what you've been learning, other than to be like super scared about talking about it.
I'm very proud of you, as I am every single time we do this, and just keep doing what you're doing, and don't second guess yourself or doubt yourself, because you always have the right answers, and when you don't, it's fine. That's how you're gonna learn.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to ask.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Good job, Sienna. Congratulations.